Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with your hosts, Rob and Randy, who reveal the truth, the lies, and confusion about health so that you are no longer the victim to mainstream medical dogma and you are the hero to your own happy, healthy story.
Hey there, welcome back to the Happy Healthy Life Podcast with your host, Rob and
Randy.
And we are
the Happy Healthy Guys.
Welcome back. So what if everything that you've been told about grains being healthy was a big, fat lie? Today on this episode of the Happy Healthy Life, we're going to be talking about all things grain. In fact, just to give you a heads up on the title of today's podcast, that can give you a clue into what we're going to be talking about. It's grain washed. How the food industry has fooled you and wrecked your gut. So let's talk about being grain washed. And here's the thing. The ADA, or American Dietetics Association, did you guys know that they recommend for you to be healthy and happy that you should be having a minimum of 6 to 8 servings of grains a day? What could go wrong with that?
Man, I have no idea. That sounds like a very nutritious lifestyle habit that everybody should pick up. In fact, they've been making that recommendation now, for 60 years,
and
70,
people have been
80
getting
years?
healthier and healthier and healthier.
They've been doing the opposite of that. More chronic disease, more bowel and stomach and gastrointestinal issues, more chronic problems. And there's a lot of reasons why. And it's not just that one thing, but it is a thing, and it's something that you can control. And this is where we talk about, where you don't want to be fragile in life. Living the happy, healthy life isn't being perfect, but it's about being intentional. And there's some things you're not going to be able to control, but this is one of them. And so you need to know what's going on here. So this conversation could go probably 20 podcasts, but we are going to do a 2-part episode. Yeah. Today, we're going to focus on the grains. We have been grain washed. That book, that one doctor wrote, the book I read years ago, The Grain Brain. Let's talk about this. And what are the problems with eating all of these seed cereal grains?
Yeah, let's talk about this on the next episode, because this is a 2-part series, because there's going to be a lot to unpack here. Because when it comes to grains, people always ask then, well, what about vegetables? So on the next part, we're going to be talking about all things vegetables.
We all have to eat our veggies to be healthy, right?
I don't know. That's why the title of the next episode is Leafy Lies. We'll find out. You got to listen up to be able to get that. Now, when it does come to grains, they say that they're good because they've got lots of different nutrients in it. Fiber or protein. You know what? Is that actually true, or is it just good marketing? And speaking of good marketing, if we go way back,
let's lay the foundation. How did this whole plant-based agenda start? Really, what happened here? Because it's really pervasive. Even if you're a person who is eating animal-based foods, you're eating meat, you're eating eggs, you're eating cheese, you're having maybe some dairy, but you know that you have to eat your veggies in order to be healthy, or at least that is what they tell us.
Yeah, that's what they tell us. So let's go all the way back to the late 1800s with a man by the name of Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Anybody ever heard of this guy before?
Why does that ring a bell?
Kellogg,
huh? Maybe it'll come to me. Go ahead. Maybe as you keep going, it'll strike a chord with me.
Yeah, so he was a doctor, and he ran a health spa in Michigan, believed that people should be eating these very plain, boring foods, or was there a hidden agenda behind that? And then he had his brother, Will Kellogg, who invented another bland food that was made from corn.
There's that Kellogg name again. What is that? Why can I not put my finger on that?
I don't know. It could be this thing called corn flakes. So let's unpack that. Okay, so why were corn flakes developed, and what could have been the hidden agenda behind that?
Well, the Kellogg brothers, especially Harvey, they ran a sanitarium.
There you go.
And in the sanitarium, in order to control people, they found that if you could basically eliminate their sexual desires by crushing their libido with grain, you could control these people easier. So really, it was born out of making a food source, if we would even call it that, I guess it is, that would actually crush the sexual desires of people. And so sanitariums, this is where the whole vegan and the corn and the plant-based agenda started. This is no joke, guys. This is not like, trying to, invoke fear or, create like this false sense of like scare tactics. This is a reality. This is the history of what actually happened. And when you think about how crazy this is, it was actually, they were part of, and no shot against these guys, but it's the truth. These were all a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And of course, they believe, let's just be honest, that obviously sexual desires and masturbation, that was something that had to stop. So in order to do that, they had to make a food product that was going to do that. And you called it, it was cornflakes developed by the Kellogg brothers.
Yeah, so it was backed by that belief right there. So because that belief was their purpose, they wanted to be able to get these cornflakes out to every single person in the United States, but they tasted like crap. They were really bland. People didn't want them. So they were like, okay, is this going to be, is it really truly backed in helping people? I don't know. That's what they believed that they were doing, but they also knew that people didn't want to eat these things because they tasted like you were eating cardboard.
Yeah.
And I can even remember as a kid,
they didn't taste like cardboard for me.
My grandfather would eat these cornflakes, and I remember that my mom wouldn't buy me the Frosted Flakes.
See, I got the Frosted.
So yeah, my mom wouldn't buy me those. It was only the cornflakes, but I made them into Frosted Flakes by dumping about a half cup full of sugar at least into that thing, and then I would drink like that milk at the bottom that was all sugary.
Well, they would get you'd have all the the little tab you'd flip and pour in the sugar out of the little glass container.
Oh yeah.
Because grandmother didn't have the Frosted Flakes. We had them at home, but my grandmother, we had to do the regular cornflakes, and and you'd stir the sugar at the bottom of the milk and drink it. But you think about, we were eating all of that cereal, and now you think about how many children are raised on breakfast cereal. So this is really the foundation of how this all started. And you look around now, it is a multi-billion-dollar marketing campaign really directed at our children to now want and crave and eat cereal, which is not a health food.
So check out this quote from the brothers. Here's what they said. They go, "What if we could convince everyone that they needed to eat breakfast every day? Then they could be able to get these cornflakes into the hands of every person in the United States. And what if we said that cereal was the best thing to eat and breakfast was the most important meal of the day?"
Wow.
That was the marketing campaign right there.
There you go. Just like God intended, wake up and crush your libido.
Yeah. So if you ever wondered where that term breakfast is the most important meal of the day, it came from the Kellogg's brothers in order to be able to get you eating cornflake cereal in order to be able to make everybody sterile.
Wow. Wow. And it makes sense from a marketing, perspective. But it's hard to believe, because listen, we're not saying that don't have breakfast. Remember, breakfast really is break fast. What are you breaking your fast with? And really what you break your fast with can set your metabolic tone for the rest of the day, even the next 24 to 48 hours. But break fast doesn't mean wake up and pour a bowl of cereal. And of course, we already know it was never the small bowl. I remember going to the cupboard and there was this one huge, large, like party dip bowl that I poured like literally half the box into the bowl. Nobody's eating one bowl of cereal. And, my father, I remember him eating, he wouldn't eat the Frosted Flakes or the Cheerios, which was obviously endorsed by the American Heart Association for lowering cholesterol, which they still claim. But he would get the oat bran. And he would get the bran flakes. He'd get that big chunk, that Wheatix, that big biscuit of wheat.
I remember shredded wheat.
Huge. It was this huge, I don't know. It's like 87 little biscuits into one, like this big mega biscuit. And he would literally break it apart within the skim milk. And he wouldn't add any sugar. And he would eat that because he said he needed to have the fiber to be regular. And that was what his doctor said he needed to eat. And I can remember that growing up. Now we know that all of these grains, not only are there other problems, which we're going to talk about. Remember, all grain, oats, and wheat are sprayed with glyphosate, which destroys your gut microbiome, tears apart, punctures holes in your gut lining, and now has been linked to multiple cancers. I even think about my father, his diagnosis of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. and the direct link with Roundup and glyphosate and how much oat and wheat and grains he would eat for 30 and 40 years. I don't know that that really helped. That was a good anti-cancer strategy.
No, not at all. And we'll talk about that and dive into more of that, what you were just talking about. And so if we look at this, was it really backed by science, what it is they were saying, or was it just really effective marketing?
You got it.
They said, and here's what their marketing campaign said, is that breakfast gives you energy. They said that it helps kids learn better, which is why they wanted to eat it first thing in the morning. That's why you saw all the cartoons were all about cereal. And then they said also, here's the kicker, is that it boosts your metabolism, not to mention them saying that it was the healthiest meal of the day, which absolutely it's not. So let's talk about what in the world
what are some of the problems
are made of. What are grains really? So simple definition of a grain is this: it's a dry, starchy seed of grass. Okay. That's it.
It's all grass.
Yeah, it's all seeds from grass.
Yeah.
So like wheat, corn, rice, oats, barley, quinoa,
millet, rice, yeah, all of it. Yeah, quinoa.
Quinoa. Yeah. So and here's what they found is that it was really cheap. It had a lot of calories in it, so it could quote, like we've been talking about over the last few episodes. We talked about what a calorie is. We talked about what sugar is. We talked about how the body utilizes glucose or sugar as a fuel source. And so they said, okay, it's got that, but more than anything, it's super cheap. Not only was it super cheap, you started seeing it everywhere because the government was subsidizing these farms.
All the soy and the corn.
Yeah, all the soy and the corn. So if you subsidize that and you give them money, then guess what? You have these big food companies like the Kellogg's, for example, the General Mills that are out there.
The company I was telling you about in Australia called Sanitarium Foods. Where do you think that name came from? One of the biggest producers of all of these cereal-based products. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why now you had these big food companies now like literally inventing ways that they could be able to utilize grain and all kinds of other foods, in foods that you would have never even thought that there was grain in, for example, like ice cream or salad dressings. Obviously it's in bread and crackers, but it's in everything else that you could ever imagine. So let's talk about why it does create chaos in the body. So when we look at these seeds, what really is it that's causing the chaos in the body, and or is it creating health in the body? Which one is it?
Yeah, well, it's in this. We're not saying never have vegetables, plants, or grains. Hopefully, as we go through this 2-part series, we can bring some clarity to this. But you just have to think about this from even an evolutionary, and I say evolutionary, more from our ancestors and what they were eating and thriving and surviving. And you think about what the purpose of a plant is. Remember, all living organisms want to protect their seed.
Yeah.
That's just the facts. A living organism is going to do everything in its power to protect its seed because it wants to keep living from generation to generation to generation. Now, animals, humans and animals, we have instincts. We have a fight or flight response where if we're in danger, where we can either fight or we can run, that is one of the ways we can defend our seed and survive generation to generation. If we couldn't run away, if we couldn't fight, if we didn't have that response, we wouldn't have even survived. Plants, on the other hand, don't have the ability to fight you physically or to run away. Plants are these master, like these chemists. They're very sinister because they fight you with poison. And so all plants, and this is 100% true, 100% of plants and grains and cereals and seeds are plants. They're all toxic. Every single one of them. Now, some will kill you immediately, right? I'm sure some native tribes found that out the hard way. Oops, don't eat that one. And then some will kill you slower than others, but all plants have what are called anti-nutrients and defense chemicals. Okay, now we're going to talk about what are some of the anti-nutrients and what are some of the defense chemicals that plants utilize in order to keep animals from eating them and insects from eating them and keeping them from moving from generation to generation to keep passing their seed. One of the biggest anti-nutrients, and really this is more would fall into the category of a defense chemical, are called lectins. Okay, I know you know a lot about these, Dr. Rob. If you're listening and you don't know what these lectins are, these are these proteins. And one of the problems with lectins, and there are many problems, but what they do is they actually will mimic insulin. And so they'll actually bind to these receptor sites, specifically with the muscle where your body can take up glucose. We talked about in our carbohydrate series and absorbing carbohydrates, how your body has to be insulin sensitive. Well, these lectins will mimic this, block these receptor sites, and now all of that sugar can't get into the cell. So guess what your body does with it? It's going to now store it and push it into your fat and actually make you bigger. So lectins cause severe inflammation at the receptor site, cause insulin resistance, and cause weight gain. That right there is a defense chemical. As you think about it, if animals are eating these plants and they're getting sick, inflamed, and fat, and they're dying quicker, that's good for the plants and bad for the animals. Lectins are pervasive across the board with plants, specifically in cereal grains, like you said, oats, wheat, barley, rye, corn, rice, millet. These cereal grains are no good, buddy.
Yeah, they're not good. So in fact, what they'll do is, because the gut, and remember, your body is always it's doing its hardest to be able to absorb any nutrients that it can get out of that. And these lectins that he's talking about, what they'll do is they'll cause these, I guess they look like fingers inside the small intestines. It starts absorbing the nutrients in there. They're called villi. So what it does is it causes those villi to start to atrophy or literally start to die. Well, the body doesn't want that. So the body then starts fighting that.
Yeah.
So what that does is that creates then these holes or permeability within the cell wall. So now you're not getting absorption, and now your body is fighting it. And now you have what's called an autoimmune disorder, which could be called anything from irritable bowel syndrome to celiac disease.
Yeah, well, it's 100% linked to celiac. And it really isn't an autoimmune disorder. It's your body literally trying to attack and get rid of the poison that you just fed yourself, right?
Totally. So it's not even, exactly. So there's so much poison in there that it's fighting that and killing yourself.
Yet you would go to your doctor, right? And they're not going to tell you to change what you're eating. They're going to do what?
They're going to give you medication for that.
They're going to put you on this immune suppressing medication, some type of Humira or some other type of drug that's going to completely crush your body's ability to adapt to its environment, versus going, hey, maybe, wait a second, what is it that you eat? By the way, if you're going to a doctor and they're not interested in your lifestyle and what you're eating, I'm just going to throw it out there. You're going to a doctor that really doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Excuse my language. It is ridiculous. Why would you not look at what you're doing and your lifestyle and what you're eating when we know for a fact these play a vital role with what causes the body to get sick and what causes the body to be healthy? Remember, they are the exact same thing. So not to interrupt, but that just struck a chord with me, because you think about, you got this whole industry centered around ulcerative colitis and celiac and SIBO and IBS. And they're really almost all the exact same problem of being poisoned. And instead of getting rid of the poison, they actually give you more poison and prescribe you lifelong medication.
Yeah. Meanwhile, then you're trying to do the healthy thing. You go to your dietitian, they tell you to eat more grain. Thank you so much for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. And as always, if you don't know what's going on with your metabolism and you want to find out, go to metabolismscore.com.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. And, we don't make a lot of products, but the products we do make are all metabolically focused. So go check these out. Go to thehappyhealthylife.com. And when you get to checkout, use code podcast to save 10% off any and all of our metabolic friendly products.
So what's another anti-nutrients?
Yeah, here's another one too. And it's called, they're called prolamines. These are all in the cereal grains. And the prolamines, what they do, there's one specific one, and it's called wheat germ agglutinin. WGA is what it's known as. And the wheat germ agglutinin, it's not gluten, all right? That's a separate, different lectin and prolamine that has its own set of issues. This is actually found in the bran, okay? So like if you ate white bread, you would definitely have gluten, but you wouldn't have wheat germ agglutinin. But if you ate whole wheat bread, it's a double whammy, because now you're getting gluten and you're also getting the wheat germ agglutinin. So what is wheat germ agglutinin? It is the lectin that behaves like the insulin. So what it does, it's supposed to be protecting the plant from insects. So it's an insecticide, insane enough, which is a poison, and it's so toxic to the body and to insects and to anything trying to mess with it. What it does, it'll actually, what's crazy about that, it'll actually bind up and cross over into your blood-brain barrier. So it moves across the blood-brain barrier to the brain to cause systemic inflammation. This is where they're now playing around with this in the pharmaceutical industry. It's interesting how, a lot of times we say that, that real nutrition is eating a plant-based diet. Guys, plants are not food. Plants are medicine. You don't make drugs from ribeye steaks. You make drugs from plants because they all have a toxic component. So they're now experimenting with wheat germ agglutinin because of its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier as a drug delivery tool. They're also experimenting with this same lectin in use as a toxic compound to treat cancer, to treat tumors, because they're so toxic to tumor cells. So this is what we're talking about. These are all plant chemicals that are designed to injure, kill, and destroy and cause damage. And that's not saying if you eat it, you're going to die. And some people react to it differently than others. But WGA, wheat germ agglutinin, it's way worse. It may be the worst lectin of all because of what it does to your body, to the receptor sites, blocking glucose absorption, causing insulin sensitivity, and causing severe inflammation across the board.
Yeah, so we're not saying don't ever eat another, don't ever eat any kind of grain ever again. I happen to love me some pizza. We're going to talk. We'll even talk a little bit more about that even on the next episode, as far as practical things that people can do as we dive deeper into even vegetables. But when you think about it, all these things, just no different than like a dog or a cat that has teeth, claws, or fangs and doesn't want to be attacked. These plants that we're talking about have this seed that they're trying to protect.
Yes,
I know.
It's just nature.
Yeah, I know. I had a Rottweiler named Haley.
Yeah.
And when she got pregnant and had puppies, if anybody was going to come anywhere near those puppies, she was going to attack them.
Of course.
So that's what the plants
Mama
are
bear.
doing. So just think about the way God created this whole entire system. Are there nutrients in there? Yeah, there are nutrients in the plants that we're talking about, or the grain that we're talking about. However, because of what it is that we've done, even with the industrialization of things, and what we literally have this fake food, and it's really crazy how detrimental they are to our health, and people are actually being taught that they are not. So we have to wake up to these things. So there's another one of these toxins in the plants that is called phytate or phytic acid.
Yeah, so now we're moving in more to the anti-nutrient, right? Versus the defense chemical like the lectins and the prolamines and the wheat germ agglutinin, which obviously have detrimental effects to the body. Yeah, phytic acid, man, these phytates.
Oh, even before we even go there, even on the oxalates, for example. So people like, for example, they'll say that you have gout happens as a result of things like, because you're getting like too much uric acid from the proteins that you're getting from the meat.
Yeah.
The gout and the kidney stones, they're coming from the oxalates.
Yeah, these are oxalate
guys.
crystals, which we'll definitely go even deeper into on the vegetable side, because
Yeah,
you'd be
we'll talk more about
shocked.
that on the next one. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
how many vegetables are riddled with oxalic acid, which definitely is an anti-nutrient. And it's just like, it really operates very similar to, like you're talking about, Dr. Rob, phytic acid or phytates. Phytic acid, what it does, it's a chelator. So it, just much like an oxalate, it chelates key minerals. In fact, there was an interesting study done, and I've mentioned the study in podcasts previously, but what they did was they took two groups of people and they fed them oysters. And oysters, of course, are rich in zinc and copper and manganese. They're, it's kind of called like they're the aphrodisiac of the meat industry. Don't let the Seventh-day Adventists find out about oysters. I'm sure they wouldn't be happy about that. But they really are an aphrodisiac. One of the reasons is because of the mineral zinc, which is found in oysters. So your best source of minerals is really in meats and organs, and oysters are a superfood. But the point is, they did the study, and in the study, they fed the oysters, but they gave two groups. They gave one group oysters with black beans, an interesting combination. I don't know if that's really a popular Latin cuisine, oysters
not
with
at
black
all.
beans. Okay. But black beans obviously have lectins, okay? And they have tons of phytic acid. They also paired the oysters with tortillas, another popular Latin cuisine, oysters with tortillas. And,
Nope.
those of you who don't know, my best friend and business partner, Dr. Rob Vasquez, he is a Latin dude, so I always give him a hard time. But the point is, what they found is that when you paired the oysters with the black beans, the absorption of zinc was cut almost by 80%. And then when you ate the oysters with the tortillas, 0% absorption of the zinc. So when we talk about anti-nutrients, it's not even that there's defense chemicals and toxins that are disrupting your gut and causing inflammation. They're blocking your body from absorbing key nutrition. And this is what they've also found in people who've had their colon removed from colon cancer, and they get the colonoscopy bag, or they get the colon bag. I'm not sure what to call it, and they've got the stoma where you can release it and let obviously the waste out. But what they'll see is, you can see the food coming into the colostomy bag. And what you'll see is, if you're eating meat, it's all liquid, it's broken down, it's digested. What you see in these bags when you're eating vegetables or even lots of grain is, you're seeing all these seeds and undigested food that's trying to get into your colon, which obviously it's going into the bag. What that's saying is, obviously, these foods, not only are they not breaking down, they're actually blocking and eliminating the body's ability to even use these key vitamins and minerals and nutrients. That right there, guys, is scary to me, because you could be eating a steak, but what are you eating your steak with? If you're eating your steak with vegetables that chelate and block minerals, you may not even be getting the nutrition from that food that you think you're getting.
Or eating your steak and having the bread before you actually eat your steak.
There you go.
You know
yeah,
what I
the
mean?
bread tray crushing.
Totally.
Yeah, you're crushing your body
Or
with phytic acid if you're eating bread in the bread tray.
Yeah, or for the Latins, since you brought it up, is eating the corn chips before you actually eat your fajitas, and so or the tortillas. So let's talk about, okay. So with the time that we do have left, because we could talk about this all day. The time that we do have left, let's talk about the big one right here, and this is the one that everybody knows about. Is what about gluten? And the dangers of gluten. What is gluten, and is being gluten free a good thing, a bad thing? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, that's been a huge hustle in the health and wellness space, because they started diagnosing everybody with these gluten sensitivities and celiac disease, and of course now the gluten-free food industry was born, seems like overnight. And then you think about eating gluten-free is really it's fraudulent. It's a grift, because eating gluten-free doesn't mean you're eating healthy. In fact, some of the most unhealthy foods you can put into your body are gluten-free, because remember, you're still going to have all the prolamines, these cereal grain anti-nutrients and defense chemicals that disrupt the gut and block the body's ability to even uptake glucose into the cell. So you're going to get all of that. Plus, you're still getting all these other anti-nutrients and oxalates and phytic acid. So you're eliminating gluten, plus a lot of these pastries and these dishes that they make, they have a glue called transglutaminase, the meat glue, and it's literally binding it together. And that actually is a chemical that if you do get any gluten, it's going to make you hypersensitive to it. Plus, on top of that, that stuff still has glyphosate. So it may not be that you're gluten toxic. It could be that you're transglutaminase, seed oil, phytic acid, oxalate, glyphosate toxic.
Yeah, so here, for example, because there are so many gluten-free foods, and by the way, y'all, there's like the family of glutens there's about 1,000 different gluten proteins that the body cannot digest that are found in all kinds of different things, and they're hidden in different things. I mean, you've got it's in beer, soy sauce, ice cream, ketchup, lunch meat, the bouillon cubes, salad dressings, chips, fried food, and even some candy. And so it's literally almost impossible. That's why we always say that, number one is you want to make sure that you're starting with a good foundation, which is why we always talk about having a healthy metabolism, because ultimately that's your body's way of literally converting whatever it is that you are putting into your body into something that the body can use for healing and repairing. And so if you're trying to do any of this stuff with a bad metabolism, it just ain't going to work. So including doing gluten-free. So
yeah, read off these ingredients. This is mind blowing. So, if you're a gluten-free person, this ought to wake you up.
Yeah, so this is a gluten-free blueberry muffin, and I chose this because there's a place that we go to locally, and they've got a lot of gluten-free foods, and one of the gluten-free foods that they have is a blueberry muffin. Now, this isn't taken from the blueberry muffins there, if anybody's listening from there. However, this is a typical gluten-free muffin, and this is the ingredients. We got sugar, enriched gluten-free blend of rice flour, cornstarch, modified cornstarch, amaranth flour, brown rice flour, quinoa flour that we were just talking about, comes from a seed, potato starch, tapioca flour, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, niacin, reduced iron, folate. So now you've got all these synthetic vitamins that are in there, meaning that they are man-made. You've got finally some eggs. It does have blueberries.
Wow, whoa. It does have blueberries in it. Shocker. I thought it'd be some type of artificial dye that would make it blue.
Which is funny, is it's so far down in the ingredients list, and it's actually a blueberry muffin. All right, eggs, blueberry, soybean, or how
do you not know what's in it?
Canola oil. So both of those being PUFAs, right?
Yeah, water, exactly. Another problem with vegetables.
Some egg whites, yeast, citric acid, leavening. They use sodium bicarbonate, sodium acid, pyrophosphate, cornstarch, monocalcium, and it keeps on going. Oh, here we go. Natural flavor and cellulose gum that your body cannot break down. We'll talk more about cellulose on the next episode. Dextrose, salt, soy, less than xanthan gum, sodium propionate, yeast nutrients. It's got calcium carbonate, calcium panthionate, calcium phosphate, calcium sulfate, pyridoxine, hydrochloride, amylase, absorbic acid. And once again, there's it does have almonds, coconut, hazelnuts, pecans, or it says it may contain almonds, coconut, hazelnuts, pecans, and walnuts.
That's always confusing to me when you don't. I don't know what could possibly go wrong
but it's gluten-free.
It's gluten-free. It's safe. What they didn't list in the ingredient list was the transglutaminase, because that's 100% got the meat glue in there to hold it all together, which makes you more sensitive to all of those defense chemicals. It also didn't mention one of the defense chemicals called aquaporins, which is found in corn and other soy-based products as well, which causes neurological damage. They've linked it to damage to your vagus nerve. And if you know anything about gut health, that gut-brain axis, that connection from the brain to the gut and back to the brain, that right there is your vagal nerve input. These aquaporin toxins damage and stimulate and will aggregate into the vagal nerve, causing systemic inflammation and gastrointestinal disruption. Wow, they didn't mention that in the ingredient list.
They didn't. So here's what we're saying, and you can go back and you guys all know that whenever you saw something way back in the day that was sugar-free, you already knew
meter goes off.
Sugar, but it was loaded with a bunch of other crap. So now we're also seeing that with these gluten-free foods. Most gluten-free foods are literally junk. And so you're trading one enemy for another one.
Yeah.
And then we're seeing these people and their healths are going downhill as a result of that. So, you know what? You just got to be aware. You gotta educate yourself. You gotta ask yourself way better questions and not just take it for granted. If they're telling you to eat more gluten-free, you gotta ask yourself, who is it that the they is telling you to eat more gluten-free
Yeah, who
foods?
are they, these people? I don't know. I know that this is all the more reason why you ultimately are responsible for your health and for the health of your family. You can no longer turn it over to the food industry, to the FDA. It's like the fox guarding the hen house. You can no longer turn it over whatever political side you land on. Stop giving control of your health and the information you get over to the federal government, to the state government. Take responsibility for your own health. That revolves around you becoming super intentional with what you put into your body. We talk about surfing for your food. Simply eat real food. We talk about sci-fi, single ingredient food items. That blueberry muffin is not a single ingredient food item. If it's
That's
got
about 1,000 ingredient food
I
item,
lost
and it's
count
not
after
even.
50.
Yeah, I don't even know that there was actually food in the blueberries. I forgot.
Maybe.
It had eggs. It did
Okay,
have eggs.
maybe that's real. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But that right there, if there's more than one, two, or three ingredients, you already know. Run for your life. The no fat, the low sugar, the gluten free. You're seeing all this nonsense. So this is where if you give this stuff to animals, you make them sick. I've seen so many commercials now. It's weird. I've been watching more commercials lately, which I never really watched TV because of all this NCAA basketball. And I'm a Duke Blue Devil fan, and I'm watching all this. And of course, it's just riddled with propaganda and drug commercials. But I'm seeing so many commercials about feeding your dogs better food, like these real dog food commercials. And I'm thinking that's really cool. Yet there's no commercials about feeding humans real food, because we know if you give dogs and animals corn and soy and grain and cereals and all these defense chemicals and anti-nutrients, you kill them. That's why with cows, they eat grass. They're able to eat these seeds because they can biohydrogenate. They've got a multi-chambered forced stomach that's able to utilize this and actually turn all of those plants into saturated fats and healthy foods they can use that we get to eat when we eat the cow. But when they give them grains, cereal grains, what happens to these animals? They get huge and fat and marble because grains make animals sick. They make us sick. And there's a reason, because plants don't want to be eaten. When you start eating these plants, there is a price to pay, especially if you don't know how to prepare them properly. We may can even talk about that in part 2. What are the ones that we do eat? What are the ones that are the best to absorb? Because a lot of the nutrients and the vitamins and minerals you think you're getting from plants, Dr. Rob, you're not getting them because they're not even in their bioavailable form. Plus, you're getting all the chelating, the oxalates, the phytic acids, the lectins that are blocking the absorption and could potentially be making you sick. Who would have thought that eating all of these plants and grains and cereals could actually be making you sick? Something to think about.
Yeah, so here's the truth is you don't need grains to have a happy, healthy life. And so even letting them go, which is why even when people come into our metabolism program, we don't have them doing any grains, okay? Because ditching them can allow your digestive system, your gut. And by the way, speaking of the gut, we can guarantee you that if you've been eating grains throughout your lifetime in any way, shape, or capacity, you've got an unhealthy gut.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, so we're going to give you resources to be able to check out our gut health program, because we do have a gut health program because of that. Without a happy, healthy gut, it's literally impossible to have a happy, healthy metabolism as well. So we'll put the link there in the show notes for that. If you don't know how your metabolism is doing, go to metabolismscore.com. And if you have any questions for us, always go to at the H2 Life on Instagram. Next week in part 2, we're going to be talking about the vegetables. We're going to be talking about how you can be able to heal all the things that we're talking about, what you should be eating, what you can be eating. If you still want that treat, what it is that you can be doing in order to not feel restricted, because there's anything about us when it comes to food. We love food. When you're out to eat with us, you know that we are not restricted in the things that we love. But I do have one question for you, Dr. Randy.
Okay, what you got?
One parting question.
Why that?
You
You
were talking about, well, you brought up the NCAA tournament and you brought up the Duke Blue Devils.
I did.
And so I was just curious. You're in a bracket, right? For the NCAA tournament. I was just wondering who's in first place right now in that bracket.
You know, I haven't really looked at the brackets, so I really don't know. It sounds like you know where I'm at and where you are in the bracket, but just remember, I have Duke winning it all. And if they do win it all, that's going to move me ahead of you. So the race is not over. Don't count.
I'm just saying right now. Yes.
Hey, have you heard of Kenny Rogers? There's a really good song I used to love singing as a kid when my parents would play cards with their friends at the table.
What's that?
You better count your money when you're sitting at the table. Don't be counting that money. You hadn't won anything yet.
Called The Gambler.
Yeah, The Gambler. That's it.
The Gambler. That's it.
Don't be counting your money. You hadn't won it yet. But hey, not to completely digress.
I am in first place.
You are currently, but we have the whole.
Just saying.
It's Final Four. It's all going to play out next weekend, and we'll see.
Florida. I have Florida to win it all.
And if Florida wins, then you're going to win the bracket. However, if Duke wins, then I'm going to pass you in the bracket. Go Duke Blue Devils, rooting for you guys. This is going to be exciting. And don't miss part 2.
No, don't miss it.
Because we are going to talk about how to even prepare plants and vegetables. If you are eating them, what's the best way to prepare them to reduce the anti-nutrients and block some of the defense chemicals? And also, what about fruit? Is fruit okay? Doesn't fruit have defense chemicals? We'll still talk all things vegetables, fruits, plants in part 2. You don't want to miss that.
Karen votes for more singing. Yeah. All right. Maybe we'll do some more singing.
You better count your money.
Y'all don't want to hear
when
me
you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done.
There you go. We'll bring my son on, who's actually a singer.
Thank you, Sharon. Sharon loves my voice. Come on. Thank you.
There you go. I'm actually going to see Jacob this weekend in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm super excited to go see him, taking my mama and my sister to go visit him.
Dude, let's get out of here. We're completely off on a million rows, but I'm excited you're going to go see them. You're going to be in the heart of country music. Speaking of people who can't sing.
I can't sing at all. I could sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and y'all would have no idea what I'm singing. You'd be like, those lyrics sound familiar.
I love it.
I can't place it. All right.
That's so good.
Y'all have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to The Happy Healthy Life with your hosts, Rob and Randy.
Love you guys.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow them on Instagram at the H2 Life or on YouTube and Facebook at the Happy Healthy Guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.